Good morning. It's just after 5 a.m. here in Calgary, and today is a deep dive on the Serratus Anterior, this little yoga lab for our Tuesday session. What I want to outline here is that we've got the shoulder blade here, and the Serratus Anterior is a muscle that comes underneath the blade, attaches to the medial border of the blade, and then its fingers come alongside the ribs right along here. They weave in with the obliques, and the obliques come through here and then across the body to the other side of the hip. The other is that we've got rhomboids and middle traps that attach to the medial border of the blade that also attach onto your spine. And then we have a series of muscles attached to the blade and attach up to the neck. So the reason I bring that up is because so often we look at a muscle and go, okay, I need to activate that muscle. Or the Serratus Anterior, for example, is the problem muscle. I need to do something with the Serratus Anterior. And they might very well be correct and accurate in that the Serratus Anterior is a problem. They might be, right? But rarely is it just a muscle that is the problem. The muscle is an expression of the problem. And we need to be looking at other aspects around this joint area, but also further away from the joint area. And we do that by watching someone move. So we don't need to get all complicated and complex about it. We just need to use our eyes, take in the information, see what we see in their movement, and begin to understand a little bit more about how these parts relate. So what I want to play with today is I want to play with a common movement that is done for people who have Serratus Anterior issues, which is tabletop push-ups, right? And what are we really looking for? Because there's lots of people who will do that and their Serratus Anterior doesn't improve. But I should really say the problem, which is probably a shoulder or a thoracic spine or a neck that's been attributed to a Serratus Anterior that's not being active or activated, or there's a number of words that will describe whatever the serratus problem is that issue doesn't actually go away. So the issue that's been attributed to the Serratus Anterior not acting properly doesn't go away. So that leads us to wonder, is it really the Serratus Anterior that's the problem, or is it how they're doing the movement that's the problem? So I'm going to take this morning's yoga lab from the perspective of, let's maybe look at the movement, and maybe the movement's not being done well, and then we can improve how the movement is done, and then we'll likely see some shift or at least get some data that gives us more understanding about what's going on with the person's issues. Okay? So I'm going to put Mr. Friendly Stand back up onto his stand, and I will be back on the mat in just a moment. Okay, so when people come into tabletop and they're doing that push-up, what they're basically doing is they're doing this motion here. So if you bring your hand underneath, like here's your armpit, you bring your hand down to where your ribs are, and maybe even, if you can, feel the bony bit of your blade. And if you bring your hand kind of in and around here, there might be some tender points in here, but if you put your hand here and then you just kind of move retraction, protraction, retraction, protraction. When you're protracting, that Serratus Anterior is contracting, hopefully. And then when you're retracting, that Serratus Anterior is releasing. So contracting, releasing, protracting, retracting, protracting, retract. Okay, now, when we're coming into tabletop, it's the same idea, yeah? So we're here and it's retracting, protracting, retracting, protracting. Now, lots of times what will happen when people will do this is watch this area of my ribs, is they'll do something like this. So now if I'm extending my spine as I do that movement, and my intention is to be doing just a protraction, retraction, am I actually doing protraction and retraction to the ability that I could be doing it? And is that the Serratus Anterior doing that work? And the answer is no, it's not. Right? So if you're seeing somebody, or if you yourself, as you're doing this and you're looking in your camera, you're seeing yourself doing this, I mean, it's a movement. It's a movement. Like we do cow and cat, like that is a movement. But if your intention, this is the important word, intention. If your intention is to simply do a push-up, a tabletop push-up like this, that's your intention, but you're not doing it, you're doing this instead, then then you're not sending and creating the neuromuscular patterning that's going to actually get you the result or the outcome that you want. Right? And so then some people will then say, okay, well then if I'm doing this, if my intention is to do protraction and retraction, but what I'm doing is this instead, right? I'm exaggerating it for video purposes. Then I'm just gonna pull up my ribs. To see how I did that? Pull up my ribs. I'm gonna hold my ribs in because the ribs are not meant to be moving. And I'm gonna brace the living shit out of the movement. Sorry, I did an S-bomb. And then I'm gonna do the movement. Now I want you to try the movement. And how free do you feel in it? You've just created another compensation pattern. So in the effort to make the movement better, which like kudos to you, you've now braced this and made all of this area tighter, well, in air quotes. You've put more gripping and bracing in through here. That serratus anterior feeds into the obliques. Those obliques come across here. I'm just gonna throw out a hypothetical. If you're gripping and bracing in here, how well are those obliques functioning? If those obliques aren't functioning well, then is that serratus really functioning? Right? We've got the diaphragm in through here. We've got transversus, the top of the transversus. We've got the top of the rectus abdominis. Those all attach down to the pelvis. So then if there's a lot of gripping and bracing up here, then how is that setting up a connection with the pelvis? And then that's going to have an impact on how that serratus and how those shoulder blades function. So you can kind of get the idea that I'm not a big fan of gripping and bracing. So you're here, and then can you just find the movement of that tabletop push-up of protraction and so retractions this way and protractions this way. Notice what else you want to do. Do you want to use your pelvis to do the motion? Do you want to move your head? Really, really common is the head does the motion and not the blades doing the motion. So the first piece of it, see what's really cool about this is that you're starting to recognize what you are not aware of, right? So you might not even have been aware that you were doing that with your spine or your head or your pelvis, or you were doing any other compensatory pattern. You thought you were doing retraction and protraction. Herein lies the problem, right? So if you're someone who has consistent, persistent pain through your shoulder girdle, your thoracic spine, your neck, I mean really anywhere, chances are pretty good you're moving in a way that you were unaware of, which is contributing to why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, which is why I get a little passionate about this. Because when you start to improve your awareness of what's really going on in your body, then you can start to resolve stuff, right? We can't fix anything we're not aware of. So if we take the time and we have someone's eyes watching us in our movement or using our camera, seeing what our movement is doing, and then move in the range that we actually have available, now we're starting to improve the neuromuscular patterning that's going to shift what goes on between our brain and our system and our system and our brain. Okay, so what I want you to play with, let's play with this now. So we're here, arm is here, yeah? And we're going to move that arm forward and back, yeah? So that's protraction and that's retraction. So now that you've got your camera in front of you, I want you to notice what the heck you do. Do you move your head? Do you move your ribs? Do you grip? Do you, all the number of things. Are you doing something with your toe? Are you gripping up with your pelvic floor? I remember after I'd fallen down my stairs, this was back in 2010, anything I did, I gripped through my pelvic floor. So you could grip through your pelvic floor. You might be doing that, yeah? And then you get to only move as far as you don't grip through the pelvic floor. And see where that movement is. This is where it's really cool when you start to see the relationship between your pelvis and your shoulder girdle. Yeah, as an example, right? And so when you can start to train yourself to only move in a range that your pelvic floor doesn't start to grip, guess what? The pelvic floor stops gripping and your shoulder girdle starts to improve. Yeah, I see this over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, so now we're here. So we're kind of moving that. Notice what you're wanting to do. Now, can you move only in the range, and I've got my fingers pointing up, maybe you need to keep your palm down, but now only move in the range that you actually have, that you actually can do it without elevating your blade, so you're not raising it up towards your shoulder. You don't have to set it. You don't have to set it. See what I'm doing? If I'm here and now I'm doing this, now I'm using all of this to set my shoulder blade. Now let's do that motion. Now we just got another gripping and bracing pattern going on. So can you simply just, I'll do it this way. Can you simply be here and then do that motion? Now, sometimes you're going to need something. I'm just using this as an example, right? I got 20 minutes with you guys, right? So sometimes you might be here, and this is a bit high for me, but you get the idea. Sometimes you need to put your hand on something, and maybe it's doing that, right? And you're getting a feel. Now, maybe when you do that, you'll start to notice that you're twisting, right? Twisting is not protraction and retraction, right? Maybe what it is that you need to do, maybe you need to be on your side, and maybe you need to be on your side and do the motion from this orientation. Maybe you just can't be vertical with gravity this way. Maybe you need to come at it this way. Maybe put a bolster underneath your arm and play around with your retraction and protraction and retraction this way. But again, notice what you want to do here. Do you want to like pull that blade down? Do you want to pull it up to your ear? Are you wanting to brace and grip through here, or pull your legs together and hold really tight, or push with this leg down to the floor? Is that what you're wanting to do? So you've got like, you're starting to see that. You might not like what you become aware of, but holy smokes, if you actually take that time and become aware of what you're doing, I will promise, I will actually promise that things will start to change. I've seen it for over 25 years. That when you become aware of the stuff that's under your level of awareness and you start to address it, right, things start to change. Okay, now I'm going to show you something with this TheraBand. So with this TheraBand, we're going to put this around the ribs. You've probably seen this before if you've seen my other videos. So we got this here. Now what I want you to play with is just some breathing. So with breathing, I want you just to easily breathe. I need to easily breathe because I get super passionate about this stuff. So easily breathe and just notice where in your body you feel yourself breathing. And then, without changing the volume of your breath, that's really key. Without changing the volume of your breath, bring your breathing out to the side of your ribs. Now, the reason I said don't change the volume is because anyone can push the ribs out, or many people can push the ribs out just by increasing the volume of their breath. I want you to direct the breath from where you felt it in your body to the side of your ribs. Really, really easy here. Okay, now from here, bring your arm up. Now stay aware of that movement of the ribs, or just maybe your breath has settled down because it's just generally easier to breathe. And now do your protraction and retraction. And notice if your movement patterns have changed at all, or how you're feeling in your movement patterns, if those have changed at all. Maybe if you're aware of a little bit more. Or coming onto your side and doing that, notice if that's shifting. So you're noticing if your relative relaxation, your relative awareness of your breath, and then you add movement to that, if that's changed. Does that change your ability to grip and brace, or your desire to grip and brace? Yeah? Does your easier breathing change how much you want to pull that shoulder up to your ear, or pull your blade down towards your hip? Or do any other deviation and compensation? Okay, now let's come back to tabletop. Okay, so now we're here, and we're going to go into, now stay with the breath here. Good. Now, when you're connected to your breath, easy in your breath, does your head want to drop down to the floor? And now only move as far as that doesn't happen. Only move as far as that doesn't happen. Only move as far as whatever it is that you like to do to compensate, you're not doing. Tomorrow, I'm going to build upon this on our next practice, which is ease as the foundation to strength, and of playing around with the serratus anterior, the connection to the obliques, coming into more some core stabilizing work, and starting to explore that a bit more. But here's the message I want to leave you with, and that is whatever you practice is what you get better at. So do you want to practice getting better at compensating? Do you want to get better at gripping and bracing? Or do you want to get better at becoming aware and of reducing pain? Of tapping into that which is you. So where do you want to practice? Where do you want to get better? Because wherever you put your focus is what's going to happen. Okay? So with that, I will leave you. Enjoy the experience of how your shoulder blades and your breath feels and how your body feels, and I will see you tomorrow. We'll continue to build upon this with our next series and sequence. All right? Mwah. Take good care. Have a great day.